Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dungeoneer's Tavern. I am Neko Warlock. I know. Oh my god, a face kinda, not really. Anyway, today with me we got Eldritch Defender, Martin Legations, and someone new to the group. Welcome, Reim. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
You are not, but it's fine.
I'll get it eventually. Anyway,
One
in
day.
today's episode, in today's little talk, we're going to be talking about building organizations and how you can make your organizations unique, fun, and how you can incorporate them into your world/game. Let's get started. Who would like to start off?
Uh,
What
I
makes
feel
an
like I could start.
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, yeah. Generally,
Anyone?
organizations, we know them, we love them. We can see them in media, we build them. But essentially, what are they and why are we putting them in our games? Uh, an organization serves one thing and one thing only at the baseline to an interaction with the players. When we build an organization, it's not like a book that we read where we can. Even then, there's various things that can happen with an organization. It can be in the front lines. It can be an ally to the players. It could be something like support for. If we'll take an example for like a Warcraft book, where we have the silver hand that helps in some parts of quests to the various allies. Sometimes an organization can work quietly in the shadows to the point where they are barely mentioned even to the reader, and then they are pulled as a surprise twist. We can take the aspects from there, but generally, when we build an organization, the question is how do they interact with the players? Uh, Anyone else wants to add for that?
Oh yeah. I just wanted to add. Sometimes organizations don't need to interact with the players because what if you're making an organization just for the backstory of your world, something
Oh,
that once was. There once was the Ancient Order of Knights, the Paladins who watched over this portal to the abyss, but then the portal just closed and they all ran off. Like
Oh,
sometimes that's the
it's
purpose of an
still very
organization.
much this is still very much an interaction. Your players
Yeah.
can interact not directly, but indirectly. They could come across this portal. They could learn the story from there. They could learn
Yeah.
about this Order of Knights. They could then do their thinking about, hey, where are these knights based on? Which is the place of operation? Maybe we could find some secret lore or spells or anything of that sort over there.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's an interaction doesn't mean directly. All right, this is a combat encounter. The players encounter people from here, or hey, these guys are giving us a quest. An interaction could be something in the background.
And
There's an actually, I think like there's a good example even in the Candlekeep's ideas there. One of the one shots goes over the Brantifax Chalet, essentially. A small hut filled with people who are were ravens, and they have a small organization where they hide and keep evil magic artifacts so they won't fall into the wrong hands. And they use their voice mimicry to scare the players away and try to create unknown distractions. But essentially, if the DM wants to play differently, the players might not ever know that there was an organization there. They might just stumble across a few artifacts and that's it.
that's
Or
something
they could be very frontline. Yeah.
you mentioned something about how that organization is a bunch of were ravens. And I think that I read that part of the Candlekeep. That's part of what makes them unique, isn't it? Part of what makes them more interesting than if they were
Mhm.
just a bunch of humans who were storing away the items, you know? Like that's something you want to have to make them interesting. Like the Order of Knights who are protecting the abyss. How did they do that? Maybe this Order of Knights just used guns to shoot the demons to death instead of swords. Like maybe these knights just did not give a frick about honorable melee combat when fighting the demons. Or maybe they were lycanthropes too. But what makes these knights unique? What makes the ravens unique? How can
Well,
they set apart? How can they stand out to your players instead of, oh, look, it's a thieves guild. This thieves guild operates quietly. They steal stuff. Maybe this thieves guild is uses mimics to infiltrate
Hmm.
the items. Like they send in mimics with their shipments into the vault as disguised as gold pieces, who then turn into normal form and steal gold and get out. That's an interesting practice. That makes the Thieves Guild stand out from a bunch of guys who just
Yeah.
walk in and steal stuff. You want to make them unique, stand out. That's how you make them cool. That's step one to making them cool.
I won't say this is necessarily the step one, but it's definitely one of the steps.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's when establishing a guild, you need to remember three main purposes, three main parts. Who made the guild, who's a part of the guild, and why was the guild formed in the first place. Once you
exactly.
have those three things done, you can determine what they use, what they do, and how they run internally.
Hmm. Yeah.
If
Yeah,
one example is the simple thieves guild, they were one. A simple explanation was that there is not as I read as many others. Maybe it's a gentleman's thieves guild. It was run by a master gentleman's thief who stole from the rich and corrupt and gave to the poor. Who do they hire? They hire other rogues and those who have gone downtrodden to train. How do they run? Unlike other thieves guild, they'd be very honorable and they'd be respect those who have poor and do no more harm than necessary.
Oh, but something you mentioned about that Thieves Guild example that I like is that an interesting way for that guild to interact with the players is like that seems like the kind of guild that would leave a calling card before they steal something. And I
Hmm.
think that's an interesting way to get a guild started up. An adventure hook involving an organization, if you will.
Yeah,
Like how they can help the
Um,
plot along.
yeah.
This guild leaves a calling card, and then the PCs are hired on to stop the guild. But additionally, as this goes on, I like how this organization is kind of sympathizable. Like they're breaking the law, but they're chaotic good in a way, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
And so they leave
exactly.
the calling card. And you can also have an interesting plot where they can decide if they want to help their employers and get their money, or if they want to help this honorable, righteous guild. And
yeah.
sometimes guilds are just, or groups, are just evil bastards. And that's fine. A demon cult
Hmm.
can be just as fun as a sympathizable group. Like
Yeah.
sometimes your players just want to bust in there, slaughter all of the people summoning the demon, and then walk away happy.
It
I'm gonna get it right
not
there.
all guilds have to be extremely complex and more conundrums. Some guilds can just be guilds that you can just have and destroy at your whim.
Yeah, some of
Yeah,
them are just a bunch of crazy people who got together,
yeah.
like the
I
PCs.
mean, the treating the PCs as a guild is an interesting idea, and I saw some games where the PCs were part of like a guild, essentially sent on a quest, and
Yeah.
this can be really fun. But generally, I feel like most guilds fall essentially on a scale, somewhere in between. I can give an
Mhm.
example from my world where there's a city called Chimera. Essentially, a bunch of people from various other places got warped into the Feywild and got stuck there, so they built a city, a fortified city, with
Hmm.
walls and rivers that will give the Fey less influence over them, and then tried to survive on their own. But the city quickly fell into corruption, and so the entire city wasn't built with like government in mind or stuff like that. It was essentially various guilds, which with each being defined by a moral code. Who's the main base for this guild or these people? What is their end goal? What do they want to do? And what's the circumstances that essentially put them there? So one guild would be a bunch of and essentially a mafia working really dishonorably, bringing weaponry that is unknown to the Fae to just try and take over by force. One would try and become a trade, opening a tavern, letting people fight to the death, and then taking off the bodies to the basement, cutting them up, and serving them as food, being the only source of meat. Maybe because of how we know we can make crawling claws out of hands and stuff like that, there's a full-on corpse trade with
Hmm.
various lords and people buying and selling corpses for both meat and ritualistic purposes. And what if there's a Tess Love Feather, which is a force in the city as well is an NPC I designed. She is a succubi that runs a brothel in the city and uses some of the portion of the shares to give away to the homeless. And wait, this is a city. What if they all have a certain moral code that they are bound to, no matter who they are, if they are affiliated or not, such as never striking or attacking anyone with healing capabilities or things like that sort?
Hmm.
And
Oh,
what are the and what are the repercussions if someone does one of these things?
well, something you
Uh,
mentioned. Oh,
yeah.
you mind if I interrupt real quick? Well, I was just saying, you mentioned something about how guilds have moral codes and stuff. And, sometimes they could follow any alignment like a player can. Lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good. But what if you had a guild that's just like their main core tenet is lawful or neutral or good or evil or chaotic? But there are alignments, mixes between those. So maybe you have a guild that's like really, really interested in spreading law to the entire planet, but that could be conquest paladins, and that could also be devotion paladins. That could be different alignments, evil and good, and that's where guild sects come in. You need to think, how do people disagree about the purpose of a guild? Or maybe they don't. Maybe they're all good and happy. But in reality, that's not often the thing that happens. There will be disagreements about philosophy,
Hmm.
because that's just how philosophy works. There's disagreements about it. And splitting up a guild, turning a guild into two separate guilds, like the Githyanki and the Githzerai is one of my favorite examples from base 5e. Like, their entire race got split up over ideologies after their victory. And
Yeah.
sometimes ideologies get twisted like that. And that's something you may want to think about. That makes a guild more interesting. That makes a guild more realistic than just they're a bunch of people who were founded 1,000 years ago, and to this day there have been no disagreements within them, and they're all the
Oh.
exact same happy family now.
Guild
Hmm.
disagreements are one of the core ways to introduce like plot lines and subplots to your campaign. But I do think
Exactly.
there is a bit of a pitfall by basing a guild around a morality rather than a goal. You need to feel
Yeah.
like, all right, let's take another group from the very same city I mentioned, the Bloodfist clan. What are the why do they exist? Well, orcs are known to rampage and ransack villages and cities, which created a case where a lot of orcs took women captive, used them, and there was a wave of half orcs being born. And people didn't want to keep those half orcs. They brought painful memories. There were more mouths to feed. So they ended up forming a clan only made of half orcs called Bloodfist Clan. And what are the goals? The goals is essentially to survive, to have their own place in the
Mhm.
city, to be accepted as part of the
Hmm.
people. And who is their leader? Well, they have various tests of strength to test their metal against each other. And how do they reach those goals? Well, they introduce themselves. They fight in the tavern where people are fighting to the death for the sake of getting dinner, just to make themselves known. They lend themselves to other parties to solve disputes. They help the monastery that popped up there with various tasks, but they also serve as bodyguards for various guilds or people who fear for their lives. And essentially, and are the orcs the same? No, the half orcs can constantly disagree over some stuff. Each one finds their own way, but the end goal is the same. We want to be accepted.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But also, I think that raises another point. Like, this organization's purpose is just to survive, right? That one,
Um,
kind of.
it's the first. It's the first goal. It's the most immediate one. Correct.
But organizations can exist for different purposes, and that's something you want to think about when making your guild. Like,
Yeah.
I can name a couple examples. There are thieves guilds, there are
Mhm.
religious organizations, there are cults and religious organizations. Very, very different, by the way.
Yeah.
The Church of Bahamut is not the same as the Church of Baphomet. Okay?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bahamut, that's a church. Baphomet, that is a cult. That is a really cool cult. I love Baphomet's cult. They are so cool. That's a topic for another day. We can talk about that later. I love Baphomet. Um,
Mhm.
anyways,
Well, yeah.
um, thieves guilds, religious organizations, cults, merchant guilds. What else is there? Could someone help me out here?
Adventurers
I
Guild.
mean,
Adventurers
yeah,
guilds, yes.
Adventurers
And
Guild, Mafias was another thing that we
yeah,
touched in the
military.
video.
Yep, military
Yeah,
guard and
Militaries,
guard
yes.
as well as the as well as mercenary guilds.
Mercenary guilds,
There's
yes.
different a lot of to my knowledge, there's different base guilds. There's the military guilds, which is like guards and militia, as well
Mm-hmm.
as mercenaries. There's
Yeah.
Yeah.
the basic criminal guilds, which has like assassins and thieves guilds. There's
Even
the
then, though,
Yeah.
those are way courses of action, not necessarily what defines them.
Yeah.
mhm,
Even with
But
thieves guilds, I feel like we can. There's various examples. You could go for something which is more of a mafia, violent overtaking, infiltrating businesses,
yeah,
paying bribes. You could go for thieves guilds, sort of like the classical Skyrim sort of thieves guild, which is just sneak around, steal stuff, go back here. But even then, we do it in the name of Nocturnal, for example.
mhm,
Assassins can be holy or unholy murderers that work for a god, or they could be purely to make money. But even then, when you try to make money this way, is there an end goal? What do you want to do with that money? Do you just try to get rich and then move away to some other place and live in luxury? Do you want to
yeah,
stay there and essentially rule from the shadows?
yeah.
There are a lot of ways you can take everything. You can take everything and make it into various sects, sections. The very same guild could be reflavored 1,000 times, and each time will feel unique.
Yeah.
yeah,
Also, the secrecy level of a guild is important. The cult of
Yeah,
Baphomet, they're gonna hide in their underground maze. The cult of Bahamut, they're gonna send their paladins out healing literally everybody and killing evil dragons or whatever.
mm,
But also, you can also sometimes something I think is fun with the cult of elemental evil, for example. They pay homage to the four princes of elemental evil, El Hydra, um, and the other ones whose names I forget. I think there's Imix,
yeah.
Omox.
Image.
I'm sorry. That's not relevant
a
because the
mix.
real
oh,
reason
yeah.
that I love the cult of elemental evil is because it's actually a front by Zagat Moy to get her cultists. She runs the entire cult. The cult is a secretive, shady organization, but then there's a secretive, shady organization within the secretive, shady organization that's trying to work to get more cultists into Zagatmoy, and I love that. That that's so fun.
It reminds
I
me of
also love.
something. Reminds me of something I read about cultists of Asmodeus and Mephistopheles,
Yeah,
where sometimes Asmodeus lets people worship statues of Mephistopheles because they worship him thinking is actually Asmodeus. So using the
Even
lacking information to actually get more followers at the back of someone.
Yeah,
yeah.
even the Duergar, like their god, like for a long time has just been Asmodeus in disguise. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
gods disguised as other gods is something that happens a lot. Like I think that the Kuatoa have mistaken Demogorgon for one of their deities once and have like their own name for him. The Troglodytes have their own name for him.
yeah,
A bunch of his worshippers have different names for him. And sometimes you need to think about like if this is a religious organization who worships a god, do they know the true name of this god, or have they just seen his influence? Like, would the people of the woods who have 0 books on Demogorgon but saw him rampaging through the woods one day and thought that's a god, really think that like he's Demogorgon and say we are the cult of Demogorgon, or would they say we are the cult of Bi Monkey Head Man, which stands for two-headed monkey in our language?
How
And
about taking it a step further? Are we even a cult? Do it? People will from the side will
Yeah.
see might see it as a cult, but are we the cult of the Demogorgon or the cult of the two-headed monkey? Are we? Wait, are we even a cult? We're just worshiping him so we can survive. We just don't want to die, man.
they have a bunch of life domain clerics devoted to Demogorgon because they
Yeah.
don't know he's evil. They sometimes gods will just not pay any attention to their cults or what they're doing,
Hmm.
and so cults can take really, really liberal approaches, and that can be funny to see sometimes. Like the cult of Baphomet might be a bunch of farmers who are raising bulls and paying homage to Baphomet, and just like putting pentagrams everywhere and writing "Life to the beast, hail Baphomet," and then just growing and raising bulls or something. I don't know. That can be funny sometimes. So that's not how to write like an actual engaging guild.
Yeah.
It could happen. It could happen in your world, but
Yeah.
it's a bit unserious.
Yeah, I feel like if we want to like make good guilds and write them well, we need to start. First of all, we need to approach the big issue. There are main ways to world build. Essentially, there's the gardener versus architect type of thing, where either you build from slowly from where the players are in the iceberg method and expand it, or you build from the top and then focus and localize details.
Hmm.
I tend to find
I
most people do a bit of both. At least I do. I kind of didn't know where to start, so focused on the players, focused on the thing, and then try to build bridges.
Yeah. I do
What did you
more of
say, Neko?
the garden. Hmm?
Neko,
I
could you repeat what you
personally
said? Yeah.
top down.
Yeah.
That's why I also have everyone else. Eldritch is one of them to help me like build the smaller details of my world because I personally don't know how to do that too well. They do, so I let them help me
Yeah.
with that, and it becomes even more fun whenever we all play Sunday game. Because to be honest, I know a DM shouldn't pick favorites, but Sunday game is my favorite.
Wednesday game is
Fight me
better.
on that.
Wednesday game is far better.
Wednesday game is chaotic. There are definitely fun moments, but whenever the players are constantly walking into death, just Bargel and sometimes Dry, uh, it can get a little bit like, why? Like, I just want to strangle you sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that's just the token DM experience.
Unfortunately,
yeah,
if you tried to strangle my character, he would hold his breath indefinitely. He's an
and
Irganasi.
Oh,
um,
white.
I know one little organization I made that I've been especially working on developing a bit more is it's like a mafia that mostly resides in this one town that are all vampires or like some variation of vampire.
Hmm.
Um, the Vampire Mafia. Uh, their name, the Crimson Order. Their leader, it was the first vampire, and they sort of like do all that work in the shadows, but everyone in their main town knows to fear their name. Like they know they're here, but they know they are powerless to do anything against them.
Mhm.
Do you want, given that we are here with some of your players, do you want to like try and build the thing together? Try and see what's the thought process on building this together, like in the smaller details, or will that cause problems with the game you're running?
Oh,
Uh, I'm already working with Eldritch, Morgan, and like all my typical crew on developing this vampire mafia, and we are doing
yeah,
pretty good.
yeah,
Um,
but also
Hmm.
I just
especially
want to.
against their
Well, I was just gonna say something about how that guild vampire spawn are the first form of vampire, right? You don't
Yeah.
always start off in the highest ranking member of that guild, right? You gotta join somehow.
yeah.
You gotta join up as like the first rank. You gotta join as a vampire spawn, and then rise your way through. But sometimes you need ranks for an organization, is what I'm trying to get at. You don't all start on the same. Sometimes you do have organizations that everyone is equal, but you
Oh,
will often have the
but
High Priest of
there
Bahamut in
are
the Church of Bahamut, or the High Priest of Baphomet. Not everyone is created equal in a guild. You advance higher
there
or
are
more.
definitely ranks within this mafia system. Though most people are just foot soldiers to say, and because it gets slightly more up with Gaudiel, the lord of them all, being at the top, of course. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I've been working on developing it a bit more with my main group that I talk to develop things with,
Yeah,
and even like their
yeah, but
like
I'm just trying.
clashing heads with another subfaction known as the Silver Moon, um, which are all lycanthropes. Because I took a lot of inspiration from Skyrim with a lot of
Mm,
my things.
Yeah,
yeah,
even though
A
I
lot.
I take a lot of inspiration from like Skyrim and Warcraft lore, and essentially then try to put my own twists. So I recently began. It started from a subclass I was designing, but then I was like, wait, let's make the entire organization because I already had the ideas. Then I went to sketch it down. So if you want, we could go over how essentially I'm building a guild and what's the influence over the players.
Yeah, but I was just trying to think about ranks and stuff because we've already talked a
Oh,
lot about some other stuff, but we haven't talked about how to build like a rank structure in your organization. And I think that's
very
kind
well.
of
Yeah.
important because if your players want to join a guild, they aren't going to join at the top. However, if they do like something really, really important for the guild, like if they have a
Mhm.
mercenary band who says, "Hey, you need to sneak into this dragon's lair and steal a little bit of treasure," and then the players just kill the ancient dragon, the mercenary build might just be like, God damn, you just killed the ancient great worm of ancientness and instantly promote the players to a higher rank. But
Yeah.
Well, I do
something
not feel like
extraordinary.
this is necessarily true. Sometimes they might feel like, all right, wow, it's cool, or they might feel like, hey, we needed him alive. We told you not to kill him. We told you to steal from him.
Yeah,
And again,
sometimes that
just
is a
because a
thing.
player might help an organization, that doesn't mean the characters join. They might run the players through like various tasks in order to join, and organization will have a different structure. With
Yeah,
mercenaries, it's usually simple. You have one leader, and everyone else are directly under him. We can look at Red Dead Redemption 2, for example.
Mhm.
You have Arthur who's working together at the top with. God damn it, I forgot his name now.
I don't remember it either.
Uh,
Never played
uh,
The
that
guy,
game.
the guy,
fancy guy, black suit.
the guy, the black suit guy.
Yeah, fuck it, we'll call him the
That's
black suit
okay.
guy for now. But it's a relatively simple structure. Even though they are a rather large group, there's the one in charge. There's the people who work there, and sometimes there's like the all the extras, the women that the characters, the NPCs are involved with, or
Mhm.
families, or animals, livestock, all of those things. And with or cults or stuff like that, the order will probably go like a high priest that's directly working under whichever god or entity it works there, or maybe
Yeah.
it's not even maybe it's like a real life cult, no necessarily god or godly influence involved, just worshiping the person directly. Under that, there will be like a close circle. Let's say 3 to 5 people who are very close, and under that, there's gonna be like similar. Even though we're talking about the cult, we can take a look at the Christian rankings of like priests, bishop, archbishops, all of that, up until the very top of the hierarchy, the pope.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's a religious order or a cult. How they would look like. If you go with an army, you'll have various ranks with again one person at the top, but a rather larger group in the second in command, And then again, there's ranks, and the way and the main definition is how you climb up the ranks, essentially, with a religious order. If you look at let's take a look at the Catholic Church's demands for like priests. You need to study. You need to study religion since from a very young age. You need to do your religious education. You need to do a degree, a university degree in religious studies, and then you can qualify after a test to become a priest. That's how you get into the organization at level one, essentially. And then you need to be close to people who are related to the thing, and essentially it's after a certain point you just wait for people to die and hope you get picked
Yep. Good
in
point.
the positions which are for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
yeah.
But also,
uh
I just wanted to say something earlier that Nico brought up about his mafia and how they're all vampires. Sometimes it doesn't even need to be the entire organization that's all vampires, but it can be really, really fun if you add like even one strange supernatural being into an organization. Like if you have a mercenary company and they're like, you've done a great service to us. You may now speak with our leader to demand payment. And they roll up to the leader, and it's an Arcadoloth. They're gonna be like, damn, they have a Yugoloth leading them, and Yugoloths are mercenaries already. So it would make sense for one to run a mercenary band. There are plenty of ways that you can fit supernatural beings naturally into
well,
organizations,
you
like a
could do it
chieftain
Yeah.
with
running a church, and it can be fun. It's not
you
something you
could
have to do, but I'm saying it can be fun.
yeah, you can there's three main examples I want to about, and one of them is really close to the conversation. We'll start with the other two. You can use Rakshasas and stuff like that as Assassin's Guild or Thieves Guild.
I love those
Or
guys.
yeah, they're amazing. You could
Yeah.
use you could it kind of reminds me of like the Secret Life of Pets, which is like yeah, it's a kids animation movie, but like there's like
Well,
you have these two dogs and they get into the sewers, and then there you think like there's this mad rabbit who's running everything, and then suddenly there's this huge snake that just lives in the sewer and marks them down as part of the guild with essentially a bite, with a scar, which is also a cool concept. So you can try and use that sort of twist on your players. Just put someone who's like you'd think is the leader who's doing
yeah.
most of the frontline talking, and then there's the actual leader in the background who keeps notes of marks, all of those kind of stuff. But I do want to talk about how both of your ideas mix, both Nico and Martin. All right. I like I said, Neko and Martin's idea can mix pretty well when you talk about an example from Skyrim, Castle Volkihar, where the entire court is run by vampires who are led by Harkon. Harkon was a very powerful king. He had all of the riches he wanted, everything he needed, and he only lacked immortality. So he went out of his way to search for the most powerful form he could find, the Vampire Lord. He took his daughters, and they all went through the rituals, which are quite horrifying, to be honest.
Hmm.
Uh, and then collected his own circle. You have three tiers essentially in Harkon's court. It's a court of around 30 or so people. Most of them serve in his circle, but a lot of them are thralls, underlings. We can see them for example, in the quest where you get to the blood chalice from Bloodwater Den.
Mhm.
Uh, each member of Harkon's court send their own underling to try and kill you and take credit for themselves over the mission. We can see their hierarchy. There's the vampires, the regular vampires who are powerful. There's the people who they bit and thus they gain direct control over. There's the cattle who are humanoids charmed by the vampires and that serve as food. And then there's the Harkon and his family that is no longer there because When you live forever, you get a divorce. That's how it goes with fantasy media. Uh,
Alright, yeah.
yeah.
One moment. I'm just gonna
Um,
see.
so we can see essentially the various difference and how it affects the guild. So in Neko's idea, maybe we said one of the vampires is the first vampire. That must mean he has essentially additional powers. Maybe he's not. Maybe the sun doesn't affect him. Running water don't help. Wooden stakes have to be a specific kind of wood or something like that, and that's how he got control over the others. Maybe like the that village, they fear the vampire cult. Maybe all of the vampires openly fear this guy, and every time that he goes to sleep, he wakes up in the morning to find a new type of wood stuck into in the form of a stake into his heart. And every time he just pulls it out and goes on with his day because he knows they'll never manage to actually kill him this way. Uh,
But
you could essentially try, go for that.
also, that kind of brings me to another point.
Yeah,
Organizations in D&D, they do sometimes disband. Some of the various things that can cause an organization to disband are something you need to think about. Like, if the leader of an organization is killed, then sometimes that will cause an organization to disband. Like, maybe the Arcanoloth running the mercenaries is the only intelligent person in the entire guild, because he purposely picked stupid people that didn't know how to run it, and they just utterly fail at running it once the Yugoloth is sent back to Gehenna, and then the mercenaries completely disband. Or maybe his advisor is a capable person who can, like, take over once he's done and stabilize the guild. So, death of a leader can have various effects on it.
Yeah.
Then,
yeah.
sometimes the entire guild will get massacred if they're small enough, but sometimes that could be rare. Sometimes, maybe the guild's purpose is just, like, disbanded because, the
They
vampire
fulfill their
mafia
goals.
literally cannot breathe through all the gold they collect, so they want to stop collecting it now. Or maybe the Abyss Knights defending the Abyss portal finally closed and they walk away and they leave their guns behind for someone else to find. Or sometimes the Thieves Guild gets caught by the law and all of them are arrested. Religious organizations can end kind of rarely when their deity dies, but sometimes their high priest dies and everyone else is too incompetent.
Yeah.
But this is also something you need to think about.
Incompetence seems to be a running theme here, but I do
Yes.
love the ideas of the knights successfully saving the portal and closing it, and then just leaving everything, and not just staying to protect it. Because honestly, if you reach a goal and you the guild will probably need to maintain the same status quo. Most
Yeah.
guilds form because the goal will never end; it shall be fulfilled to the end of eternity. But the
Yeah.
concept of the players running into a portal, rolling an investigation check, then finding a shitload of guns is really funny to me.
Yeah. To be fair.
Yeah.
Maybe even like all of the knights' oaths are engraved into the barrel of their guns or stuff like that.
Oh,
This is once again coming back to how do we flesh it out.
yeah.
But
Hmm.
let's try and shift the conversation to a more practical standpoint. How do we if a DM that's watching this video sees it and is looking for wait, how do I build a guild like for the game that's tomorrow? How do I do that?
Yeah.
Let's try and make a few bullet points to how to craft a guild. What do
Okay.
you think?
But I also just want to say, if you
Yeah.
need a guild for tomorrow's game, you may just want to take a pre-existing one and slap it in your world. You do not have time to
Yeah.
write up an entire guild in one day. Do not try that. It will not
This is
end well.
this is something over a week that you need.
I may or may
Really.
not have done that once
I get
or
that.
twice, and
But the Dungeon
I mean,
Master's Guide does contain various guilds that you can always slap into your world. Like if you need a mafia, you can try the Zentrit. If you need the Harpers, then you can put the Harpers in. You know,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with taking a guild from Forgotten
yeah,
Realms and putting it in your world or just reflavoring it slightly.
The basic way of getting a guild in your city is this guild, but you just say the differences and explain why those differences are there.
Yeah, when every guild differentiates via leader purpose and group makeup, you just need to think about those three things, and you have a guild.
Mhm.
So, say we want to create a thieves guild, and we say, all right, do you want to be the classical sneaky type, or do you want to be the more murderous type? I'll let Neko decide which one do we go for with this example.
Um, hmm. I have a very unique way of making decisions. Just let me pull out my ultimate decision guide. Um,
Are you gonna roll a coin?
I'm gonna roll a coin and flip a die. Murder. Let's go murder.
Murder. All right. Now we need to think, how does this guild interact with the players? Do we want the players to work for them, or do we want the players to work against them? And do we want it to be a secret society or one of the out in public?
Hmm.
And a secret society of murderers could work essentially, and we'll go back to the Skyrim example with the Night Mother's ritual, where essentially you say this sort of plea, and there's this religious aspect to it. The Night Mother that just tells the listener, "Hey, this guy, he wants to hire you. Go talk to him."
Mhm.
And then well, how will the player recognize them? Maybe they meet it through a basement of a house of someone who's been suspected of committing certain crime, and they suddenly found this like skeleton on the floor with nightshade petals and a dagger laying on the floor, surrounded by human hearts and candles and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Or if we want them to be more outright murderers for the sake of, say, grabbing territory, then the players might as well just enter a city for the first time, and before they even manage to ask a guard for directions to the inn, they just see these two groups shooting and tossing daggers and just going at it, screaming like. In the name of for the name of the dawn, we'll kill all of you or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, that kind of raises a good point. Like, guilds in your world, they will not always get along, because if they would get along, then they would merge. The lawful good Church of
Mhm.
Bahamut and the other lawful good Church of Bahamut are just gonna. They might just become the bigger Church of Bahamut. Might. They will not
Yeah.
always merge, even if their ideologies stay the same. Like, maybe they both uphold the ideals of Bahamut in different ways. But sometimes if
Yeah.
their goals align way too closely, they'll just merge up, become two sects of the same guild or the same guild. But if they actively conflict, like if the Church of Bahamut and the Church of Baphomet are going at it in the same town. There's a Church of Bahamut and there's a Church of Baphomet. Same town. They're sacrificing people in their underground labyrinth, and the Church of Bahamut is trying to stop them. They will try to stop them. Church of Bahamut ain't gonna let that slide. So you need to think about in your guild's history, how has the clash between the Church of Bahamut and the Church of Baphomet changed the guild? Has it become more martial ever since the people came? Like maybe the Church of Bahamut were a bunch of good-hearted healers before the Church of Baphomet rolled up and started sacrificing people, and then they had to become inquisitors, paladins, for the purpose of driving that guild out.
Hmm.
You know, this is just an example though. Like you can change them other ways. Maybe they just started healing people even more to make sure that they just became immune to Baphomet's glaives because of their healing powers.
Yeah.
Do you take note that a large organization like the Church of Bahamut would not necessarily just all change because of a guild? They
Yeah,
might be
but
like, all right,
I,
this
I'm
is this
talking.
month's donation. We have enough gold to feed a red dragon for a month.
I'm
How
talking
about we
about
just
the
order these other mercenaries to take care of the problem?
Yeah, but I'm
But
more
yeah,
talking about the small town church of Bahamut. Like, there are multiple churches of Bahamut in a given world with Bahamut. You know, like how this sect of the church is chained in particular
Mhm.
oh yeah,
for the local purposes. And the local cult of Baphomet, your friendly neighborhood cult of Baphomet, and your friendly neighborhood church of Bahamut.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe like the cult of Baphomet have this like agreement with the neighborhood that only neighbors that make noise on Saturday mornings get sacrificed or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or the ones that keep their Christmas lights on in
Uh,
July.
oh no. I mean, at that point, you can just say that the cult of Baphomet is just true neutral at this point. They
Neutral
ain't doing
good.
no evil. Yeah, no,
yeah.
but it does remind me of like a scenario. I'm not sure which adventure it was, but there's this cult where the leader once per year sacrifices like a ridiculous amount of people for to Cthulhu essentially,
Hmm.
in order to save their town from ruin.
Hmm.
If the players try and investigate or something like that, they'll find out that the leader isn't evil. As far as they care, they're doing what they need to in killing a few to save the many.
Yeah.
So at this point, it becomes like this. Well, of course, this is not the ideal situation, but as far as morality wise, even the adventure guide mentions that leader as lawful good.
Yeah.
They have a
Hmm.
strict set of rules that they use to try and save as many people as they can.
Yeah.
It's just shady as fuck. That's like the big caveat here. So even if we look at morality, the same outcome can come as a result of two very different results, two very
Yeah.
different methods.
Yeah, but at the same time, if your guys are like sacrificing people to the Minotaur, which is like CR3, when they have like a knight in their town with decked out in full plate armor and with a greatsword who could easily take down that Minotaur, that's not realistic. No one's gonna believe that that sacrifice needs to happen.
Yeah.
Like your level
Well,
1 adventurers are gonna roll up and be like burning hounds the fuck out of that Minotaur. If they're
I'm a
sacrificing people, if a
challenge that
lawful good
notion.
character is sacrificing people, that needs to be the last option. They can't be sacrificing people to a Minotaur. They need to be sacrificing people
They could
to a
do.
Goristo or
I'm
Baphomet.
gonna challenge that notion in two very different ways. There's
Oh
two
yeah,
out
right.
where I'm gonna try and
Mhm.
disprove that one.
Good
All
point.
right. Let's try and go with first things first. Say that it's a regular Minotaur, regular town, and you have this full decked out knight in town. Why did they feed them? Maybe that Minotaur was locked there for so many years that the people don't exaggerate how scary it is. The tales contort there and there, and they believe the Minotaur has additional abilities and will destroy them
Yeah,
if he ever gets out.
that's a
So
good
maybe
point.
even though the knight is more than capable and they've took out larger dangers, he might never have uh, the will inside him to face his fears and go fight this Minotaur.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
the
that's a
second
good
one
point.
is if it makes sense thematically as a DM, you can adjust stat blocks, you can change things on the fly. Maybe the Minotaur is CR 13 or 30 even if you want
Yeah.
to go real bad.
Yeah, but at the same time,
Maybe you can just
Mhm.
change everything because if I want a cool city which is inside a labyrinth where people go in and out of their house only when they do not hear the Minotaur coming closer, and they only need will go between one safe space to another while the Minotaur hunts the streets. I'm gonna do that even if the Minotaur its stat block is not that great.
yeah, but at the same time, the Goristos are kind of similar to the Minotaur, and they just like much more built Minotaurs. They seem like the kind of Minotaur that like actually was
Sure,
upset
then
to take a
then
step down and
then
missed the
it's a
beast.
Minotaur. Then
Yeah.
it's a Minotaur, but it uses the Gorista stat block.
Yeah,
Yeah. It
Yeah.
exactly.
could
Or
be.
even better yet, it is forestry because people don't like just study demonology as their like second class. They just
Yeah.
say it's a minotaur because it looks very much like one. It could actually just be a goristro, in which case you have a much bigger threat potentially.
This is
Yeah,
exactly like the Asmodeus Mephisto thing from earlier. The characters in lore in the world don't know too much. Sure, they might explore. Like I'll take a really different example that's like I'll connect it from there. But in my world, there's a magical academy, and we'll talk about how to create magical academies later, and
yeah,
how would that affect in research groups. But
Mhm.
in that magical academy, Essentially, between the two campaigns I ran, there were 100 years of like constant magical and technological progress. So it's like, wait, monsters have these various abilities, but some might record them. You might find some adventurers frantically researching. But what if essentially groups were sent not to slay a beast, but to rather study it? So take a flail snail, for example. It has a carapace that reflects spells back at the one who cast it in, say, a third of the time. A third of the time it just swallows the spell, and a third of the time it just passes right through and hits the snail.
Hmm.
So, wait, how would the people know that? How would they convey to the player that, hey, that's what's happening? So, in my world, there's a certain wizard or an artificer who put a brooch of magical shielding, the one that gives you immunity to magic missiles, which is a spell that automatically hits unless otherwise specified.
Shield.
Went against a flail snail, shield as well. Then just hold a notebook in one hand, a pen in the other, and cast magic missile repeatedly, and wrote down the result. Did it hit him back and get absorbed with the shield? Did it hit the snail, or did it do nothing? And then after hundreds of times and hundreds of magic missiles, because even say he's a 10th level spellcaster, and he's using magic missile in all of his first level spell slots, then app casting to second and third and fourth. One research day is like tens of magic missiles that he can record. To the point where you can average out. All right, if I take a first level magic missile and shoot it to the thing, one of the missiles hits him, one hits me, and another one does nothing. So essentially, you can use in-game items and abilities to try and use this narrative of like, all right, this is the research we can do. This is an experienced scholar that put his life to it. The average commoner looks at the thing and it's like, "Hey, this is a snail. Hey, it's as big as my house. Hey, I'm not gonna fight this thing. I'm gonna run away."
Yeah,
This
good
is
Yeah.
the
point.
average mindset.
Yeah, commoners can't fight like most things in D&D without dying. 4 rats can kill a commoner. So
Yeah, but if we're really gonna do that discussion and devolve into r
Eh.
slash D&D memes,
we are not.
then
We
we
should be.
gotta, yeah, thank God we're not. But essentially, hit points, we're talking serious damage. The occasional bite from a rat won't necessarily even be marked as a one hit point. We're talking like
Damage
huge ass
is
rats. Yeah,
damage is done with the lethal intent. With lethal
yeah,
intent. If
Hmm.
most bites, even from animals, aren't done with lethal intent. Like
The thing
they
is
intend to just distract.
how I
yeah,
usually flavor hit points in my game though is that most damages above 1 aren't like actually like you are not 50% dead if you have 2 health and have a hit point max of 4. You are
Yeah.
50% closer to a death blow. Like
Yeah.
the first 3 bites
yeah,
from the rat are just like distractions, and then the 4th rat goes for your throat and rips it out or something. That's
yeah,
but that's not relevant. This is not relevant. I'm just saying how I flavor slang,
yeah.
and I don't. That is not.
This is an entire. This could be
This
an
we've
entire
gotten off
episode,
topic.
honestly. Hit points and how to flavor combat and stuff like that. That's an
Yeah.
entire 2 hour episode at least.
Yeah.
We can, however, say come back to what we talked about
Oh yeah.
if we can continue on the Minotaur train and the flavoring and how to insert that thing, or we can move to like scholar groups if you want to discuss that.
Scholar
Yeah,
groups. I love scholar groups. They're kind of fun
Yeah.
sometimes, especially if you
Yeah.
they're
have
the
a
big
bunch of wizards in
thing
your party.
fences.
Uh, yeah. Or every scholar group is good other than Strixhaven because they came in the same book that Silvery Bars was in, so I immediately flat out refuse to believe they exist. No, I'm kidding. Uh,
But
but
also,
yeah,
this is raised an important point that if you want your players to join and interact with a guild, you do not want to throw the barbarian into Hogwarts and tell the barbarian, you work for Hogwarts. You are professor at Hogwarts now. That is the plot of the campaign. Well, the barbarian has an 8 intelligence, or even if they have a high intelligence, they wanna kill things. They do not want to be a professor at Hogwarts. Um,
Side note, please tell your players they will be playing at Hogwarts to avoid people creating barbarians.
Yeah.
Sometimes your players will create a
Yeah.
barbarian
Tell
specifically
them,
for the Hogwarts campaign, though. I know
yeah.
that I do that.
Yeah.
I would totally do that.
Always give your players a reference of where they'll be, even if
Yeah,
it's just a basic description, because you want to avoid having a use having a character that doesn't fit at all,
yeah, your
if
Yeah.
players will
Yeah.
possible.
not be interested in Hogwarts, no matter how well thought out Hogwarts is. Your Hogwarts has so many different student classes. It's run by a Kirin, and it's so elaborate and so well thought out. But then your barbarian's just like, okay, where is my axe storage place? I need to
Hmm.
fit it in someone's head.
Yeah, and then there's a subplot of chasing down and destroying one of the students who cast pocket trick and just stored in an extra dimensional space. There's like floating in the astral plane. There's this barbarian's axe, and soon
Yeah.
enough, the body of the student who put the axe there.
Yeah. By the way, you may want to check the channel. The new
All
channel.
right, so we just need to go through like the groups and the scholar stuff. So let's just say a few tips from me about creating scholarly groups, even though it could be its own full topic. Generally, studies and their names are based in Latin and based on the various like words we just described, this sort of study. Geography means geo earth, graphy drawing of the earth, making maps. So
Yeah.
when we search magical creatures and stuff like that, we could take the words for entomology, which is the current, which is the study of creatures, and then we can add magic onto that, or how and or the most common one, demonology, the study of demons, or stuff like that. Essentially, if you create a group, figure out what do they study. Is it in university? Where do they specialize? If you create a group, how are they like? What are they? Do they believe in active research? They believe in passive research? And by active and passive, I mean, are they reading books, trying to study from current existing sources, trying to go with the theoretical field? Or are they out there in the field exploring, performing experiments, searching for the monsters to capture and learn from that directly, and maybe creating the books that the other group will read? And then again, if you believe in class concepts inside of your world, where titles are such as wizard or artificers do exist, this might create a different group. You might, if your world has high tech arcana and stuff, you might have an entire group focused on the studying of animated life, sort of like humans trying to get to reach with ChatGPT or various AI. Maybe wizards are trying to do that as well, or
Yeah.
artificers trying to
Oh
build
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
So
I
it's a matter of how do you focus this group.
I also just want to say that if you have a wizard academy, how those wizards view other spellcasters can be an interesting thing to think about. Like, do they think that clerics are like cheating because they're calling their power from a god instead of earning it through hard work and study? Do they think that sorcerers are just like, how do they think
Yeah.
about those guys? How will they think when like the knowledge cleric of learning and science asks to enter their group? Will they be like, "Oh, you're a scientific guy," or will they be like, "No, you cheated by getting power from a god instead of through hard work and study? Study more, and then we let you in. You have not
Then
studied
take
enough."
do pay attention that what your characters think and what you think will be very different. For
Yeah,
example, characters in my world, the wizard might look down on clerics who depend on a god for their magic, or they might look at warlocks as a sort of a get rich quick kind of scheme,
Yeah.
where you pay minimal attention, just pay your soul at the end. Maybe they don't even know it.
I forgot the
Or
basics of
sorcerers
sorcery.
being like cheating bastards who just get their magic inherently. It's like, oh, your grandpa is a dragon, so now you get to do what I worked my entire life for.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, those are
but
spoiled rich
characters
kids.
might,
Control
but
system.
in character, the game universe or whatever you want to call that, your clerics might put the exact same amount of work and energy into the worshipping the god and learning it, and maybe studying the philosophies of their god or whatever deity they choose. Warlocks might stumble into contracts by accident, or they might actually again put the study as well. Wizards might not even study that hard. Some of them might be sort of like sorcerers, but instead of letting the magic develop innately, they tried from a very young age to focus it through books and stuff like that. And essentially, you can reflavor everything.
All
So
right.
even with class concepts, you can mix and match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are probably going to be
Yeah.
wrapping up soon. Does anyone have any last points to make? Or
Last point that I guess I could make is, of course, if you're gonna like have a group that'll interact with your players, and you want to kind of come up with on the fly, think of what like the players want. That's one of the main things I try to say. Think of what the
money.
players would actually want to interact with. And if you're running a less serious game, like I occasionally see, you could just up. That would be funny. I think like this cult of freaking waifus, and their whole like thing is to make anime girls real. It's just, like if
Oh
bit
no.
to your campaign goes. If your campaign is like one of those not so serious, you got a lot more to work with. If your campaign is like you know, built a certain way and like the party has a set goal, or like each of the players have their special backstories, make something that they would actually be interested in if you're going to make it. Um, with with really all that out of the way, of course, it's your world. You do you. This is just our words. Um, I've
Our
been
words.
Yeah.
Our words are
Dungeoneer's
wise.
Tavern, and we have been lit,
Yeah,
fam.
but keep in mind that our words are wise because we hired a fourth guy this time to give his wisdom, and so as you can
Hired.
see,
The word
we,
hired assumes there's a payment involved, which there isn't.
we kidnapped a
hired,
random dude off the
There,
side of
Yeah.
the
we
street.
paid
but
you with
we
friendship.
you can
Yeah, fair enough, I guess. But essentially, like
you
last points would be
can
mm, essentially last points would be A, it's your world. B, think of what's
Yeah.
missing if you want a guild for it. C, see for yourself. Hey, this is the leader. This is the goal. This is the course of action. This is the side of the group. Four factors. Those are the ones that matter for that create essentially the shield, the skeleton for every guild. Uh, so this is your base. From there, you can just take inspiration, copy existing stuff, and figure out on your own. Just go ahead, play something. You see that's cool. All right, sure, we can make that.
Yeah,
We can make a religion out of this sort of thing. Like,
yeah,
look at real life.
yes,
We took a guy on a cross and made it into a thing. We took a guy who got papers from Allah on a mountain and made it into a thing. And these are some of the most popular religions right now. If
Mhm.
we really want to look at it from the baseline, we can take whatever we see, we can make it into religion, we can work with that. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
This has
All
been
right.
the Dungeoneers Tavern. Join us
Uh,
next time for when we discuss
don't forget to
homebrewing
hit like.
monsters.
Yes. Don't forget to hit
Good luck.
like, subscribe, join the Discord. Next week we are going to be talking about homebrewing monsters.
Yes.
See you guys next time.
See you next
see
Friday.
ya.
See ya.